USA. And they're Doug and Pam. Why don't you stand up real quick? They both had success doing low carb and keto stuff, and they felt such a calling that they mortgaged their house, did all this stuff to start this conference in San Diego, and a lot of us have been influenced. And it was a huge influence on me because I was doing this stuff to lose weight and to prevent diabetes. But when you're there and you see all these experts from around the world talking about their experience, clinical experience, migraines, anxiety, depression, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and all these things that we're having benefit from that we really don't have great treatments for a lot of the time. So then I had to reach out to Jeff Potterman. I worked out with Jeff for a while. I didn't have a lot of success because he was having me drink Gatorade and do a lot of stuff, carb loading, because that's what everyone thought you had to do. And you're going to talk a little bit about that with Tim Noakes. When I reached out to him, I said, Jeff, I'm telling you, all I want you to do is look at this keto. I'm not selling you something, because he was acting like I was a used car salesman trying to sell him something. But I said, what kind of success? Go back and look at your records. People are over 250, 300 pounds. What kind of success do you have in your practice? And then Monday morning at 6 o'clock, he called me and goes, hey, Brian, do you have a few minutes? And so he realized that he wasn't having a lot of success with those type of people. With athletes and ultra-marathon guys, he was doing great. But we're not all the same.
My turn.
Yeah, you did. What do you get this?
Yes.
I don't know.
Text that. All right, so I started out very interested in fitness. I spent some time in the Marine Corps, and if you're physically fit in the Marine Corps, you actually advance. And so I used that to my advantage. While I was in the Marine Corps, I got my bachelor's degree in health and exercise science back in 1990, a little while ago. All right, and then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I started personal training practice, and that personal training practice worked really well for about 6 months. I don't know if you know this. My first personal training practice failed. Everyone quit. I had no clients. I don't know why. And it was because I was just working with the hour that they spent with me. I never asked them how much sleep they got, what they ate, if they were well hydrated. And so they got a good workout, but they all plateaued. So it drove me back to nutrition. And I've been a practicing sports nutritionist since 1993. Moved here in 96. Met my wonderful personal training partner, my wife, Tina, in the front row right here. We'll talk a little bit more about her, in 97. And I've been preaching, since I met her, been preaching, eat oatmeal in the morning, drink your Gatorade, have your carb load, do your goo, and for a certain percentage of the population, a very small percentage that I found out now, very small percentage were successful at that, and the rest were just lazy and quitters. No, but that's what was in my mind. So I'm licensed to the National Association of Sports Nutrition. I moved up in that organization. I helped start it, and now we're the spokespeople for it. I'm the director of it and the representative of this organization that started out being a very high carb, everyone should be on a high carb diet program. So now, our newest venture, we started this Tri-System Health Network, and we're rewriting the curriculum along with Doug and Pam and some other experts within the Low Carb USA community, and we're rewriting it because we got it wrong. And it's all based on a phone conversation that I had with Dr. Brian here. So what about that 27 years that I preached high carb? Well, I did have success, and in most cases it was with athletes that were already insulin sensitive. And so they did very, very well. Some people, you can just feed them sawdust and they'll get good results. One of our friends here actually was on my high carb program, and I proudly said he lost 20 pounds, and he worked really, really hard, and worked out with me several times a week, and plateaued at about 20 pounds, and eventually quit. And then what happened to this guy? Why don't you give him the short version of what happened to our good friend Chuck?
What happens, just like the rest of us, he gained all those weight back plus some. And I was, after I as a matter of fact, after I came back from the Low Carb USA, I was watching him walk at church, and I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's gonna die. I have to say something, and you want to be diplomatic, you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. But I was thinking, man, this poor guy, he was actually looking into getting a wheelchair because he was, and this is public knowledge, I'm not giving up his stuff. He's very public with this. He actually has an interview on Diet Doctor that's very good. He was 465 pounds. I couldn't weigh him at my office. He had to go to a trucking place to step on a shipping scale to get on the scale. And over time, he's lost, he said, and the thing that's really interesting, a lot of you are going to identify, he said, I can't go too, the first thing I said, because he took me up on it and said, I'll come in. And then I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's going to have diabetes, he's going to have all these things, and I'm going to have to manage for free. Because I said, I'll see you for free, I just want to help you. And so to date, he's lost like 140 pounds.
140 pounds.
So,
my 20 pounds didn't matter.
Yeah, that 20 pounds. And that's why I called Jeff. I said, hey, Jeff, I'm having success with this guy. And I didn't want to step on his toes. He's the nutrition guy, and I'm doing this stuff. So I said, I better talk to this guy. And at least I didn't want to be rude, right? But I said, this guy's having a lot of success already. But what happened with him is he, at first, couldn't go more than 2 hours without eating. Now, or he gets sweaty and anxious. So he was trying to low fat, starving himself, and then he would freak out, go to McDonald's and get 3 hamburgers and eat it and have a Coke and French fries because he was so stressed out. And that's his coping mechanism. So after about 5 or 6, he had swelling in his feet called edema. Some of you may know what that is. For like 10 years. Couldn't get rid of it. He was on water pills. He was on all this stuff. 5 days in, he calls me. And it's like 6 o'clock at night. He said, Doc, guess what? I said, what? I've been eating all day. I said, you haven't eaten all day? It's like 6 o'clock. I said, I'm not hungry. What should I do? I said, well, eat when you're hungry. See what happens. So he switched over at that point very quickly from having a super high insulin level, and we'll talk about that, down to a point where he could start fasting. So he's having unbelievable success now. And obviously we all have bumps in the road, and you kind of go back to your own thing, and that's why the podcast is so important. We walk people through their struggles, their successes, people who are doing really well and people who are doing really bad, and we try to help them along that journey.
All right, so I had to have my Damascus moment because Chuck only lost 20 pounds with me. He lost the whole person. No, he lost the whole person with you. So honestly, I had a Damascus moment because with the National Association of Sports Nutrition, we listed this guy, Gary Taubes. Anybody know who Gary Taubes is? I'm glad you guys know him. All right, I got a chance to talk to him at the last San Diego conference. We listed him as a quack. What is this guy saying? No carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are killing us. Stay away from your orange juice. Isn't orange juice part of the balanced breakfast? Right? In fact, that's part of what we would preach. Eat your fruits, eat your vegetables, eat your whole grains. You have to glycogen load. It was literally a 180-degree turn for me. And the way it happened was, as the director of the National Association of Sports Nutrition, I had nutritionists underneath me, and we would do master classes and conferences, and more and more of the not the majority, but more and more would come up to me and say, have you heard of this low carbohydrate thing? Have you heard of this ketogenic thing? Have you heard of this with athletes? And I was comfortable with it with endurance athletes and marathon runners because there's an obvious advantage to just using fat. But then when it started to come up with strength athletes and intermittent athletes and anaerobic athletes, and that it actually improved their performance, that really turned my head. And then I just love this little image. That was literally my face during a Friday night call. He called me. I had just sat down on the couch. I said, I'm done this week. And he calls me from the football field for a 15-minute conversation. I looked on my phone. We were on the phone for 2.5 hours. And I literally started out thinking he was going to sell me something like Amway. I'm like, what are you selling? Why is this? And the data was presented to me well, and then he posed that question, and I looked at my demographic and realized that there's an easier way for those people that aren't already insulin sensitive. All right, the icing on the cake, don't ever get into a situation, we've been married 20 years, but don't ever get in a situation where your wife has to say, I told you so. Because she'll continue to say, I told you so. Or the better one, Tina, you love this. I've been telling you that for 20 years. Why do you got to listen to somebody else? It takes someone else to tell you for you to do it, right? Right? I don't know. For those of you that are married, you can maybe empathize. Well, she's naturally been doing a low carbohydrate diet most of her life, and she's intermittently fasted. She doesn't want breakfast. Since I met her, I said, listen, you gotta have oatmeal for breakfast early in the morning within a half hour waking, or you're gonna die. You're gonna raise your heart, you're gonna raise your risk for heart disease, you're gonna lower your metabolism. So she just naturally would skip breakfast. And she prefers salty foods. I can remember going through, last year I told a story about Oreo cookies, right? Tina thinks they're the greatest food in the world, right? Because they can be on the shelf for a year, she can have one a month and she'd be fine. Whereas I see them on the shelf and I have to eat the whole row because it'd be asymmetrical if I left it there. The feng shui would be messed up, you know. You have to eat them all, right? And when you eat it, you kind of get a little jolt. It's, you know, it's like a drug. But she naturally doesn't have that sugar addiction. And so she's been silently teaching me by example for the last 20 years, and now that we've taken it to heart, I have a great keto chef at home, which is good. And I just want to say, you'll never guess her age, and most women can't do the pull-ups, no matter what their age. And a couple days ago, she's on the pull-up bar doing pull-ups for reps. And that's just impressive. Okay, so what do? There's this guy in South Africa, Tim Noakes. He wrote the book on carb loading, and he himself, he is a researcher with college textbooks that have been used internationally, and he's been seen going to conferences, literally ripping up his own textbook. So we had to do the same thing, and that's what we're doing with the National Association of Sports Nutrition. We're
in a little bit of the story on Professor Noakes, practicing doctor, professor, carb loading. He wrote the book on long distance running. He was the god of long distance running. His book is, I know people now who still read his book, but he rips out his nutrition chapters. But his dad died of diabetes complications. He got diagnosed with diabetes, and he just did what I told everyone to do: diet, exercise more. Diet, like we've all done. If it worked, we'd all be skinny in America, trust me. We work out more now than we ever have, and we're fatter than we've ever been. So that's what, when he looked at that, he thought, these nutty guys who sold out to Atkins, let me try it for a month and see what happens. Guess what? He lost a ton of weight, reversed his diabetes, got better, and he thought, oh my gosh, just like Jeff did. Because I remember seeing Jeff, there's more to the story. I saw Jeff rubbing his head like this, and I said, what's wrong? He said, I'm gonna have to change my whole curriculum and all this stuff I've written in all my videos, right? Because he has to change what he's doing. He realized he had to change, as did I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there we go. So that's what we're doing through the National Association of Sports Nutrition, and we've rewritten the curriculum. And starting in July at the next conference, we're going to have a full education week that goes along with the Low Carb USA conference, and it's going to certify personal trainers in this new stuff and certify sports nutritionists in this new stuff, so that we can not only educate, but educate the educators so that they can help and coach people. Because as we'll find out further on this evening, is that it's not just enough to know to cut your carbs and add a little bit of fat. There's other variables that are going to help you prevent plateaus, so you don't get frustrated, you don't do things, you don't break the seesaw. We'll tell you what that is later on. Don't break the seesaw. All right, so look at these fit people. This is a great example. There's what you'll see in the gym. So some people have abs, some people don't. And a lot of them can push weight, and a lot of them can actually run, but their body composition will aesthetically, they'll tell you something's not ideally fit. So what we're doing might not be, and what we're told to do might not be the right thing, because people are in the gym. The gym memberships are going up, supplement sales are going up, but so is the incidence of disease. And the whole theme of this talk tonight is to, hey, how is the human body designed? What are we doing wrong to not radically decrease things like diabetes, heart disease, even cancers? How come these are becoming more prevalent and not less? All right, so what have we been told, Doc?
This is what we've been told, and Jeff's not the only one who gave bad advice. We all did. We told people, eat breakfast every day, eat every 2 to 3 hours, right? Or you're going to shut your metabolism down. If you skip breakfast, you're going to die. You're going to go into starvation mode. Your body's going to panic. Fasting is not natural. Fasting is a fad. Low carb is a fad. Keto is a fad. Ketones are fad. Ketoacidosis. Everyone gets this confused. There's nothing similar to ketosis other than the name being close. Ketosis and ketoacidosis are two absolutely different things. When people are in ketosis, and what ketosis is, for people who don't know, is when you're running on body fat. You're running on body fat as your fuel source, and the breakdown product is beta-hydroxybutyrate and a couple other things that we measure. But ketoacidosis only happens in diabetes when you have very, very low insulin and very, very high sugars. In a ketogenic diet, you're not getting high sugars. And I'll tell you, right now, I've been fasting for 2 days just to make the point, right? I generally don't do longer fasts, but I've been fasting 2 days. I've been following my blood sugar. It's been in the 80s consistently. How does that happen when you're not putting sugar into the system? And I think we'll talk a little bit about that.
Are you sluggish now after not having food for 4
I have a ton of energy. We might be talking all night.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not tired.
But I'm not shaking. If I mess up, that's my excuse.
You don't have a headache?
But we'll talk about a little bit more, but that's part of it. In the church, people want to fast, but they can't. Why? Because you're sugar dependent. You can't run on fat stores. So we'll talk a little bit more about why insulin resistance is a huge problem, and people don't understand from a cardiovascular standpoint. Because you're going to hear people say, well, and I'm not a doctor who says eat fat all day. What I'm saying is cut out the carbohydrates, and then you got to eat something, and then you figure out what that's going to be for you. And that depends on where you're at metabolically, and we'll talk some more about that. Insulin is a hormone that regulates sugar metabolism. It's produced by the beta cells in the pancreas. The reason that's important is when your sugars run really high, it's toxic to the beta cells. So guess what? You're not making insulin, your sugar's high, you start going in this downward spiral where you're in big trouble. Because if you don't make it, we need insulin. We die without it. Type 1s will die without insulin supplementation. But what we're finding now is that type 1s are becoming type 2 diabetics, meaning we're giving them insulin and telling them to eat whatever they want. So we go up on their insulin and then we tell them to eat whatever they want. And when you do that, you get resistant to insulin. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because it's an extremely important thing. It is the foundation of the ketogenic diet or low carbohydrate diet. And insulin helps you take up sugar into your muscles, which you need for glycogen storage for his stuff, for doing exercise and running and all that. And without it, will die. If you look back historically, every type 1 diabetic was skinny before. Because you can't absorb that energy, you're just peeing it all out, all that sugar. So now, guess what? We just say, hey, take insulin all the time and do what you want. Then you're shoving all that. Insulin doesn't make sugar disappear. People think that. But what insulin does is shoves it into your cells. It's just like cramming into your liver, into your fat cells. And so insulin resistance is the #1 problem in the United States and in the world now. It affects about 2/3 of us. And you can never sustain weight loss until you get that insulin resistance problem solved. You can starve yourself, you can do all this stuff, and you can lose weight temporarily, but sustained weight loss, I've never seen it in 15 years of practice now. Even with gastric bypass surgery, without getting that insulin under control. So this is the point. Chuck, when he started, his insulin level was 48, I believe. Normal is 5 or less, right? Ideal is less than 3. So his insulin's sitting there at 48. And insulin blocks fat metabolism. So guess what? When your insulin's super high, it's like you can't get to your fat stores, even though he had 465 pounds of a lot of fat. Couldn't get to it because his body can't see it. It can't get to it because insulin's too high. So once he started doing low carb and cutting his carbs down for a few days, now his body sees that fat stores. That's why on day 5, which is a miracle, his swelling went away and hasn't come back, and his appetite went down. And that's a huge thing because when we talk about, all of us know, we have triggers, we get stressed, we go through stuff, and we turn to food as our comfort. Some people turn to alcohol, some people turn to drugs. Most of us in this room turn to food. So when that insulin goes down, what happens is your satiety gets better, which means you're not as hungry. If you're not as hungry, you're less stressed, and insulin is very important in a lot of factors that are critical to life. So insulin resistance leads to multiple medical problems. It's been shocking for me as a doctor over the last year to talk to all these experts and hear stories about insulin resistance. There's a doctor, I'm going to touch base about him a little bit later, but Dr. Kraft did autopsies for 50 years. He looked at thousands of patients. And when he was old and retired, he wrote a book called The Diabetes Epidemic in You. And what he did is he went back through all of his data and looked at all the laboratories trying to figure out what combination of things made this person have a stroke, heart attack, peripheral vascular disease complications. He wrote, LDL is not a significant factor, it's a minor factor like an ant compared to insulin resistance. These people all had high insulin levels. So he wrote a book, sent it to every major medical center in the United States and around the world. Guess how many people called him? 0 for about 8 years. Then there was a guy named Ivor Cummins, who's become a friend of mine from Ireland. And he's sitting there saying, hey, I think insulin's a problem. And then someone came and said to this old guy who's like 99 years old, set his book down and said, you should read this. And he thought he was a genius. He said, you gotta be kidding me. This guy already did this 8 years ago. I never heard about it. So he flew out and met him, and it's been super great because you start understanding how big of a problem this is. And so we tell everyone to eat a low-fat diet, so we take the fat out of the diet, and we give you sugar as a result. And when we give you sugar, it pumps up your insulin levels. And there's a lot of data coming out saying that is the exact opposite of what we need to be doing from a cardiovascular standpoint. So we talked about some of these things. That's the other thing that's really interesting. High insulin levels are associated with fatigue. As a primary care doc, it's one of our main complaints, and I can't stand it. It's either you're depressed, you're not sleeping enough, or now I know your insulin level's too high. And a lot of times people say, yeah, I eat a lot of sugar. Do you think that has something to do with it? So let's get your insulin level. 40, 38, 22 in a skinny person. You're insulin resistant. You don't have to be fat to be insulin resistant. And that's something that's really important to know. And then high insulin levels associated with cancer risk, breast cancer. There's a huge correlation with obesity and breast cancer. Well, that obesity is secondary to insulin resistance, but no one talks about that. That's why we gain weight, because we're insulin resistant. That's why with age, we get heavier all the time, because we get more insulin resistant over time. To explain it in terms that might make sense, as a doctor, when I see someone come in with a sugar of 300, my first instinct is, all of our first instinct, we have to put them on insulin to get their sugars down. But Jason Fung said, Brian, check their insulin level when they come in. Guess what? It's 50, 60. They have a ton of insulin floating around, but their sugar's high. Well, insulin's supposed to grab that sugar out of the bloodstream. And the reality is we can have 1 teaspoon of sugar in our bloodstream at one time. So insulin comes and gets all the extra out. And
where's it put?
Push into our fat tissues first, and then into our liver, which is fatty liver disease. We'll talk a lot about that, which is a huge thing. That's a precursor to diabetes. And then in our omental fat, which is around our organs, which is very, very, very dangerous. So, so again, they have high insulin levels. So the argument would be this. If someone came in and said, look, doc, I'm drinking 10 beers a night and I can't get drunk, what should I do? Our standard of care right now is say, well, if you can't get drunk on 10, then here, have 12, 14, 16, 20 until you get the effect you want. That's right? It's silly. But the same thing we're doing with insulin. We say, well, let's put you on insulin and see what happens. Guess what? The patient, we pump them with insulin. They get more insulin resistant. Now they need more insulin to get the effect. And they gain 20 pounds. So they come back 3 months. It's happened to me throughout my career. Come back 3 months later, they gain 30 pounds. And you look at them and say, you're lazy, you exercise, watch your diet, do this. And they're frustrated. We're frustrated. But the problem is, if we would have cut their alcohol down and say, hey, you're drinking 10 beers a night, let's cut it down to 0 for a while. Let's slowly taper that down. Then they go out in a couple of weeks with their friends, they have 1 drink, and they're done. They don't have to have 10 beers anymore. It's the same thing. If we get insulin sensitive, then we don't need to have extra insulin given to get rid of that sugar. So that's part of this is metabolic syndrome. And you'll notice on metabolic syndrome, which is a huge cause of cardiovascular disease, you're not going to see LDL on there. You see the big waist. Why? Because that's our abdominal fat, which is the most dangerous one. You have to remember, a lot of us are overweight, and if you can pitch that fat out here, it's not killing you. It's stuck in the fat tissues. But it's the fat that's around your heart, around your organs, and your liver especially. It's a huge, huge deal. And that's what sets us up to cardiovascular disease. So high triglycerides, low HDL. We've known this for years. I knew this in medical school. But no one says that it's the high sugar that's causing the high triglycerides, the low HDL, and high blood pressure. There's tons of stuff coming out now. When people get their insulin down, their blood pressure comes down. So we're taking people off medications for the first time. This is the first time in my career I've been taking people consistently off of medications. And then the high fasting glucose is part of that whole thing. And they all go together. It's all a syndrome, but no one really was piecing that together for a long time. So what went wrong? Why does our body let us get fat? Why does God allow this to happen, right? Is it because my body's not working right that I'm getting fat? No, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's protecting your bloodstream from that sugar that's toxic. Because when your sugar gets high, it causes neuropathy, nerve problems. Anyone who has a diabetic family member, it's devastating. Kidney failure, blindness. One disease after another is associated. So this is exactly, your body is saying, this is bad stuff, it's toxic. Let's stick it away somewhere and get it out of the circulation. So again, 65% of us are overweight, 40% are obese, and it's going up. I mean, it's astronomical what's happening. The point is, and this is what I argue with the cardiologists, because they say, you're telling people to go on a higher fat diet. Yeah, when their insulin's 25, that's their biggest risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So if we don't fix that problem, it's setting you up for more. And I'll tell you some more about that. If we have time, it's really critical stuff from Robert Seifus, who's a great doc. So again, 65 to 80% of diabetics are going to die of cardiovascular disease. No doubt about it, if they don't die of infections or other stuff first. But the point is, once you're diabetic, that puts you at major risk. So our job as a primary is to prevent you from getting diabetes, to prevent ourselves from getting diabetes, and it can be done. So there's diabetes around the world, just to give you an idea. What's interesting is India and China have huge rates, and then we're in third place after those guys. So you can see that one of the big things that we're seeing, and I'll talk a little bit about it, is in India and China, they're using a lot of seed oils. And that's going to be a huge topic in the next couple of years. You're going to hear a lot about how bad they are.
That's a modern thing, right?
It's a modern thing. We didn't have this. Our bodies have never been exposed to this. I was looking at a study, and they said they were doing fat biopsies on people. So now we have about 20 to 25% linoleic acid in our fat tissue. In 1940, it was less than 1%. And that comes from seed oil. So we're storing it. Your body says, this is not normal. I'm storing it. And if you see how stuff's extracted and what it does, it's really unbelievable.
So India and China were cultures that could survive healthfully on a high carbohydrate diet, and then modernization has backfired in the extreme.
Yeah, exactly, with a lot of processed foods and rice. And now we're taking over China by exporting Coke, Pepsi, McDonald's to them. Now they have it, and their bodies aren't used to that. And it's causing a lot of cardiovascular disease for sure, no doubt about it. And so most people think if you eat fat, you're going to block your arteries, it's going to make you fat, it's going to kill you. Science and clinical experience gives us a different story. When you look at the data, it does not show that. Everyone says that, just like everyone will say, oh, if you skip breakfast, you're going to shut your metabolism down. There's zero data for that. Eating 5 times a day came from Weight Watchers, because people would look at this little tiny breakfast and say, you got to be kidding me, because they were on a calorie-restricted,
high carbohydrate, processed food diet. It doesn't work. The failure rate for Weight Watchers is somewhere in the range of 96%. Last statistics I've seen, only 4 to 6% of people reach their goal weight on Weight Watchers. Jenny Craig, worse. All of them are worse. And so we keep doing it. Why? Because there's a market, and you keep making money off of it. So this is one that really changed. A big fat surprise. It's really good. She goes through all the scientific data about fat. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of how we came to that conclusion. But this is a really good book if someone wants to read that. It's very well done and very well documented. She took a huge risk and took a lot of flack to write that book. Everyone was after her. And now they're saying she was right after all this time. So we talk about different energy sources. I happen to have a Volt, and it can run on electricity, it can run on gas. It can run on electricity for about 37 miles. After that, I can run on gas for about 300 miles. So the difference is our glycogen stores in our muscles. We can run on that for a little while. But these long distance runners, they can run on fat. And if they're running on fat as their energy source, they can go forever. And they're breaking all the records now. There's a ton of documentation of this. So again, my body will run on electricity if I give it to it. So your body's going to run on sugar if you give it to it all the time, and it will be dependent on it. But at some point, you switch over to gas, and you can run forever. It's like a tanker running on a little gas tank versus that huge tank on the back. It's going to run forever on that tank. And a lot of us have a big tank that we can run on. So, yeah. So again, in the athletic and Jeff's realm, they talk about sprinters running on glycogen stores. For instance, here's an example. I haven't eaten for 2 days. My sugar's in the 88 range. It should be lower than that. Why is it high?
because my liver is breaking down fat stored there to use as an energy source. So it's a misnomer that people get low sugars, they don't replete their glycogen stores on a low carbohydrate diet. There's tons of data out there showing that. And people are running hundreds of miles